Welcome to Realty Executive Southern Region presentation of Overcoming Objections. Seminar this afternoon is just a way to kind of warm us up and get us a feel for what's going on in the real estate industry as it relates to how people present objections and how maybe we can overcome them. So sit back and relax and let's just take a look at some of the things we need to look at. First, there are two categories. There's the buyer side of the objections, and it's interesting when you take a look at the buyer side of the objections, you have issues, you have fear under those issues, you have uncertainty, and then you have reluctance. But guess what? On the seller side, guess what the issues are on the seller side? There are fear, uncertainty, and reluctance. Well, now we're going to take a look at both sides and see which one of the objections are easier to answer. First, we're going to look at the power of positive thinking. Are there really any objections you can't overcome? Well, I've had one in my life, and it was a difficult one. I was in Washington, D.C., and we were going out on a presentation. The fellow that I was taking with me was from Lebanon. And the family that we were going to visit was from Iran. And when we sat down in the living room, the fellow that owned the house asked the question of the fellow from Lebanon. He says, "What religion are you?" And the fellow says, "I'm a Christian." And the fellow from Iran said, "Well, I'm Muslim. Thank you for dropping by, but you'll have to leave." And we actually had to get up and leave. That was one objection that we just could not figure out to overcome. Have you had an objection that you haven't been able to overcome? And do you know why? Why is it that you haven't overcome that objection? And what are they? We're going to talk about those today and see if there's any particular objections that you've had that you haven't been able to overcome. And have others in the room here had objections that you've had difficulty overcoming? And what are they? And what do they say or do to overcome those objections? You know, I don't have all the answers, but I'm sure that those that are here with us do. So as we go through the program, if you have a particular objection that you've had and have had difficulty overcoming that, or in addition to that, maybe you have an answer to an objection someone else has. And that would be a great benefit to them. So we'll go through that and do that today. Let's just take a look at the objections, starting with the sellers first, and then we're going to take a look at the buyer side. Just a thought here on seller objections. In order to win each time, we must practice until we know that we can make the shot, and that shot counts. Just like in basketball when people warm up before a game. We need to do the same thing ourselves. How many times do we go out cold on a listing presentation and don't warm up ahead of time? Don't, think, what were the objections I had the last time and how would I overcome them? So let's take a look at some of the objections. Let's, first of all, take a look at myself. Am I presenting myself as an executive when I go out and make the call? And if I'm not presenting myself as an executive, is that a negative when I walk in to talk to the people? What I don't want to do is start off with a negative approach. What I would like to be able to do is start off neutral, if not positive, when I go in. So am I presenting myself as an executive or not? And if I'm not, is that an objection? The next one is my presentation the best it could be? Or am I winging it sometimes? Or I'm not going in and really thinking about all the things I need to cover when I make that presentation? Am I on the step when I go in? Or am I just showing up? Those are some things to consider. The third one is, am I including everything I should include in the presentation? After a while, sometimes we have a tendency, if we make a number of presentations, to begin to leave things out because, I left that out the last time, and I was able to secure the listing. I'll just leave it out again this time. But maybe we shouldn't leave things out. Maybe we should include everything in the presentation. Let's take a look at a couple of objections. Let's take a look at the real softball one first. Let me ask you this. How would you answer this? I need to think about it. The seller just says, we've heard everything you've had to say, Ken, and now we want to think about it. How do you answer that? What would you say? Well, one of the ways to overcome that objection is ask the people what they would like to think about. For instance, let me ask you a question. In wanting to think about it, is it the price that you're putting on the property is hesitating you to make a decision? Or is it the length of time that we're going to market the property? Is that an issue that you'd like to think about? Is it anything in my marketing plan that I've covered that you have a question about and that you'd like to ask additional questions? What is it that you would like to think about? What's interesting is that out of the entire population, 13% of all people really need to think about it. The other 87% can make a decision. What we have to uncover in that questioning is finding out whether or not they really need to spend time thinking about it, or whether or not they're just using a delaying tactic. Most for sale by owners, they go through a for sale by owner school, and the school teaches them that this is one of the things they need to use in wording against the relationship between them and the agent, is that this is the objection you always need to ask, and the objection is, I'd like to think it over. So develop a dialogue, and through that dialogue and through the questioning process, you're able then to uncover if they really need to have time to think about it or whether that's just an objection, just a delay. Another one, we don't want to list it for that long a period of time with any company. If they give you that objection, how would you overcome that? You see, their thinking is the longer that I list it with the company, the less that they really need to market the property because the pressure's off of them to respond in a period of time. What if we could alleviate that issue to where they realize that there is a certain amount of marketing that has to be done on a piece of property, and time is part of that issue of marketing? What if we could get them to say, well, what is the marketing period for property? And well, let me share with you what that is. In this particular market, with the houses that are on the market at the same time yours are, what we found out that it takes from the time it's listed until the time it gets under contract about 144 days. Now, we were talking earlier that I wanted to market it for a 6-month period. Well, here's why. Is if it takes 144 days to sell a house, that's an average. Some take longer, some take less. What I was asking for was 180 days. Well, that's only 36 days between 144 and 180. So what I was really asking for was an extra 30 days tacked onto that period to be sure that I was comfortable with it. But if you're okay with understanding that it takes about 144 days for a house to be sold from the time it's listed to the time it goes under contract, would it be all right with you if we just added another 30 days onto that? Maybe make it 174 instead of 6 months. Would you be comfortable with that? What we have a tendency to do as realtors is we come up with blocks of time. We'd like to have a 90-day listing, a 180-day listing, a 270-day listing, a 1-year listing, depending on the market. And that's arbitrary for the seller. What they need to have is the facts so that they know what the marketing time is on a particular property, and all you're asking for is an additional 30 days. For instance, if this particular market, let's say that the days on the market from the time it's listed to the time it's sold is 210 days, you certainly wouldn't want to take a 6-month listing. So what you would tell the seller is, well, the average days in the market is about 121 days. What I would like to do is have a marketability period that runs between, say, 210 and an extra 30 would be 240. So I'd like to, if we could, put it on the market for 240 days, which gives me a chance to market it. Let me tell you why. It's important that we don't have to change horses in midstream. And so if you're choosing me as your realtor of choice to market your property, I'd hate to have it come to where we're all real close to getting an offer on a contract and then our time expires. What I'd like to do is have a little bit of extra, a little cushion, so that if we're in that process near the end of the listing period and we're getting a contract on the property, that I'll have a chance to work through that within the period of time that we have written on the contract. The next objection, let's take a look at this one. It says, we don't want to pay that high a commission. You know, there are a lot of discounters out in the marketplace, and a lot of us are having to say, well, what do I do? Well, the first answer to that is, if they ask the question, well, will you cut your commission? And of course, you can respond back and say, no, I don't do that. I don't do that. But if they say, we don't want to pay that high commission, will you cut your commission? The answer is, well, let me ask you this question. How soon do you need to get out of the house? And if they come back and say, well, we need to move pretty quickly. Well, then you could say, well, if you really need to move pretty quickly, instead of going down the commission, why don't we go up? Let me tell you why. You see, as realtors, we're paid on a commission basis. And what I do is whatever we come to terms on the charge is going to be, I give half of that away to the company that provides the buyer. And then they split that between the company and the agent, whatever commission split they have. So if we're talking in the marketplace a 6% commission, normally I'd be giving 3% of that away. Well, a lot of people in the marketplace are looking, because the market's tight and we're on commission, the agents are looking to see whether or not there are any bonuses or incentives on selling property. What I would like to do is have you consider, instead of 6%, 7%. With me doing this, giving 4% to the agent's company that has the buyer, if they offer a contract. And that way, what that'll do is when we begin to market that, all the agents in this area will then notice that they'll make more money selling your house than they will the other houses that are out here in the marketplace. And I'll tell you what I'll do. If I provide the buyer, I'll waive that extra 1%. and we just make it a flat 6. Is that fair enough? Could we do that? And if they say yes, well then that's one way that you can overcome that. What we found out is that we need to make it their benefit. We can talk about how great we are and how wonderful our company is and all the marketing we're going to do, but they don't really care about that. What they really want to know is what's the benefit for me. And the benefit here for them is that they'll have more agents showing their property by doing that than any other reason. So that's another one. Another one says, well, why should I use you when Bob Smith will sell my house for $10,000 more? Well, let's think about that a minute. The seller has looked at hopefully the same information that I'm providing for them on what the value of the property is compared to what Bob Smith is saying that the properties are selling for in the same marketplace. I'm hoping that the analysis that we give the seller is the same. If the analysis is the same, then it doesn't matter what Bob Smith thinks the property is going to sell for. The buyer's only going to pay what it's worth. Now, many people don't know this, but over 80% of all buyers before they come in the marketplace go online to look at what property is selling for, and they do a lot of searches. And there's a lot of different website avenues that they can go to search for property. If they've got a feel for what property is worth in a certain neighborhood, and the seller decides to place their house in the market for more than that, they may elect not even to look at it. And so the key is not that Bob Smith can get them more. The key is what is the real value of the property, and are you willing to put the house on the market for that value? And let me ask you a question, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Would you prefer to work with somebody that has given you all the facts, shown you what's available, show you what is going to trigger an offer on the property? Or would you rather place that with someone who says they think they can get you more? You know, there are some agents in our marketplace that maybe aren't as ethical as others, and they will try to buy inventory by convincing the seller that they can make more for them on the property than what is actually able to be done. And because of that, because of greed, sometimes the sellers lean towards that particular agent that says that they can get a little bit more for them. What we really need to do is convince the seller that the data that you're providing for them through the competitive market analysis is accurate, includes all the data, that we're not leaving anything out, so that when the seller makes the decision, they can see the range that the property is in, like theirs, that are going to sell for that range, whatever that range is. And in looking at that range, they need to place it within that range and not outside that range. And so what we need to do is not put down Bob Smith because he thinks he can bring him $10,000 more, but what we need to do is go back and show him the real value of the property and help them to make a decision based on that real value. So they'll throw that wedge in there, but they really need to know that we're professionals and we know what we're talking about and we've done our homework and we're prepared and we've come forward with the data to show them what the value is and not what somebody else thinks they can get for the property. Another objection is I'm going to try to sell it myself, and if I can't, I'll call you. Okay, we've gone through the presentation and they've gotten to the end and said, listen, thanks for showing me everything you've got, but we've decided to go ahead and try to sell it ourselves, and if we can't, we'll give you a call. Well, I found out that people don't call. Other realtors in the meantime will be contacting them, and when they have that soft moment when they feel that, well, maybe we can't do it, dear, let us talk to somebody. And by the way, Century 21 just called last night, so maybe we ought to have them out. What we need to do is have an understanding that they don't call you, that we talk about maybe having a period of time they do market the property themselves, and if it doesn't work out, then we'll have a chance to have a relationship with them. So you can stage this. You can ask the question, well, I understand you want to market yourself. How long would you like to do that until you're willing to let somebody else market it for you? Based on all the things I've shown you, and you picked up some good ideas on how you can use some of the product, service, and tools that I've mentioned, that you may be able to go out in the marketplace and find some of those to help you market the house, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But in saying that, you'll get to a point to where you'll say, you know, we haven't done it on our own. And at that point, I'd like to know if we can have a relationship. What kind of relationship can I develop with you so that at the end of that period, I'll be your realtor of choice and we'll be able to help you in the marketing of the property? And matter of fact, you tell me, how long would you like to try to do this? You want 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month? Tell me the time. And then what we can do is we can sign an agreement based on the end of that period of time, so you don't have to worry about anybody else coming in and making a presentation. You don't have to be concerned about, gee, is the next person that comes by as a quality of person as you are. So then we can have that relationship already established if that's all right with you. So if it's okay with you, why don't you tell me the period of time that you'd like to market the property on your own, and I will then work out the documents to where at that end of the period, if you don't sell it, I'll start marketing it right away, and we can get on with the marketing of the property. Another objection is my uncle is a realtor. You know, if we decide to sell, my uncle's a realtor, and we'll probably use him. Well, do you pack up your briefcase and leave when they say that, or do you not do that? Do you do something else? How would you all handle that? How would you handle it? Well, my uncle is a realtor. Well, here's what I would say. Gee, I think it's wonderful that your uncle is a realtor. Let me ask you a question. How deeply personal is your relationship with that uncle? Does that uncle of yours know your deepest secrets financially? And do you want him to know your deepest secrets financially? Because this is a major transaction that's occurring, and there's some things I'm going to need to ask you that are pretty personal. And by the way, I work very confidentially. And of course, your uncle, being part of the family, if he hears something about you and your finances and what's going on, would he keep that at a level of confidentiality that he needs to? Or would, by some mistake, a little bit of that gets spread around the rest of the family? And so the question is, do you really want to use your uncle? Do you really want to do that? I would say, no. I think what you need to do is have a neutral third party, somebody that is really looking out for your best interest. And if you want to use, I'm not saying he's not professional, but if you want to use a neutral professional, I'd like you to consider me in doing that. Would you consider me instead of your uncle? Always ask the question. At the end of every objection, always ask the question. Say, okay, I've attempted to answer it. Now, did I answer it well enough that you're willing to consider me to be your realtor of choice so I can market your property? Another objection. Your company didn't sell the last house they listed on the street. Why would I go with you? How would you answer that? I mean, here we are, where our company, our brand, had a listing on the street that didn't sell. Now, you're certainly not going to tear down the agent that had that. I mean, that executive is in your company just like you are. So how do you handle that? Well, one of the questions is, you ask this, well, I understand it didn't sell, and do you have a feeling for why it might not have sold? And 9 times out of 10, the seller's going to come back and say, yeah, it was a little overpriced. And we'll say, yeah, you're right. It was a little overpriced. And unfortunately, they did not place it in a range such that we got a trigger point from the buyer. And we need to place it in a range so we do have a trigger point. Now, we've talked about that in the pricing of your property, and you've pretty much done that. So I don't think you're going to have to worry about the property not selling, because you've done what needs to be done. You've agreed to fix the house up and stage it for sale, and you've also agreed to put it in the price range that will trigger an offer from the buyer. The next one says, well, we paid more for that for our house when we bought it. What do you mean we have to put it on the market for this? Well, in these times, that's what's going on. You've noticed that in the newspaper, it's almost daily that somebody says about real estate that, well, the property values were worth a lot more 6 months ago. There has been some depreciation in the value of property. We understand that. It's not what the property was worth when you paid for it, it's what the buyer is willing to pay for it today. And what I've shown you here in the competitive market analysis, and the window I used was a short window. I only used a 90-day window. And having that 90-day window, that shows that I've got properties that have gone under contract and have sold in the last 90 days, not 6 months ago. So I'm using real approximate value. And so, yes, you may have paid for the house more than that 2 years ago. But that's not the issue. It's what the buyers are willing to pay for it today. And so based on the ranges that I've shown you of what the properties are for sale for, are you willing to put it within that range? Now, there's a different presentation, which is on the listing presentation. And in that presentation, there's a graph. And that graph shows that as the property price is set higher and higher, it removes the number of buyers. For instance, when the property is put on the market at fair market value, only half the available buyers will even make a consideration to come by and look at it. As the seller begins to raise the offering price, you find out that the buyer is educated to the point to where fewer and fewer buyers will even be willing to look at it. And you can actually, as you tick it up in offer price, you can also see the number of buyers fall off at the same ratio. So if you go 5% market value, you'll have some of the buyers fall out. You'll have 10% above market value, you'll have even more buyers fall out. You go 15% of market value, you'll have probably almost all the buyers fall out. There may be one left over at 15% above, but then he doesn't need to make an offer because there's no urgency. Matter of fact, he'll wait a long time before making that offer, so he can make a lowball offer and get the house. So it's real important that we place the house in a range that you capture the greatest number of buyers. And so what we want to do is have you go back and look at the CMA that I did, the competitive market analysis, And in that, look at the range that properties are currently selling for, just like yours, in the same type of condition, same neighborhoods and so on around this area. And where in that range would you like to place it so it'll trigger an offer? Another objection is, I just don't have time to be tied up with a real estate agent. I mean, we've got to get out of the house. We've got to get in a hurry. You're asking us for a long period of time to market the property, and we've got to get out of the house in a hurry. So I don't want to sign that long of agreement. I think you'll sell the house faster if we have a shorter period of time to market it. So let's do it for 60 days. I mean, you know, if I give you a 60-day agreement, you'll really just hustle to get this thing sold. But if I give you a 6-month agreement, well, you'll take forever to sell it. Well, they're unfortunately not paying attention to what it takes to market a property. And what really it takes to market a property is two things. One is pricing it properly, and number two is staging it for sale. And if we can get the house to be staged like new construction, and we can get the price close enough to fair market value where it triggers an offer from the buyer, you don't have to worry about the marketability time that I want to market the property. It'll sell quickly. But for some unforeseen reason, that by pricing it right and staging it right is still difficult to sell, you certainly don't want to change relationships in midstream. So that's why we need to have a marketability period long enough that we get the property sold, we have that relationship, I do what I say I'm going to do, you say what you're going to do as the seller, and it ends up where we both come out ahead. You sell the house, I earn the commission. Here's one. Let's say, for instance, I'm a seller, and I work for a corporation that has a third-party relationship, which means the corporation will buy my house. So they say, well, listen, I don't need to list with you. If I can sell on my own. If I don't sell it, the corporation will buy it. I said, well, they could do that. Let me ask you the question. Does the corporation pay you full retail, or when they come in and do a broker price opinion, they ask the person that's doing the broker price opinion to give them a forced sale price, which means they want the property sold within 90 days. Because, see, the corporation doesn't want to hold the property. They don't want to hold it for 6 months or a year, because whatever your payments are, they've got to make them. So if your payments, including utilities and all that other stuff, ends up being $2,000 a month, they don't want to hold it for 6 months. That's $12,000. It eats right off the corporation's bottom line. They want to get rid of the property. So they're going to come in with a broker price opinion that's going to be lower than retail. They just have to do that because they want to get out of the property within 90 days after capturing it from you. I'd like to give you the opportunity to maximize the gain on sale. So why don't you let me market the property until they decide to buy it? All right? And I'll work real hard to get it sold so you can make more than the corporation's willing to pay you. And they're going to pay your closing costs anyway. You've already told me that. So what you want to do is get a maximum gain on sale, and I believe I can help you do that. Is that fair enough? Let me work it until they absorb it. If I don't get it sold by then, that's my loss. I've spent money, tried to market it, tried to get it sold, and then they can absorb it in a period of time, whatever it is, 60 days or 90 days or whatever it is the company's willing to take it from you. But I'm willing to work for you in the meantime. Is that fair? Okay. Another one. If I list, I'm going to list with Bill. He's my best friend. He's in the real estate business. You know, that's similar to Uncle Fred. Best friends. Again, we talked about that earlier, but do you really want to disclose to your best friend maybe some intimate financial details of your family? Probably not. And going back to having a neutral third-party professional do your business for you is much better than working with a friend. And number two is, what if the relationship on the sale of the house doesn't go well? Is it going to damage the friendship that you have with your friend? Would it be better to keep your friend because they're not involved in the transaction and work with just me? Would that be better? And the next one is, well, XYZ will sell it for less commission. Well, they may offer less commission. But, we talked earlier that we're all compensated in the marketplace. If some other company puts it on the market for 5%, and guess what? Let's say they share 2.5% instead of 3%. You see, they can't really be in business if they take it on the market for 5% and share 3%. That means they're only doing business on 2%. If I'm operating off of 3% and another company's operating off of 2%, that means they're trying to stay in business for a third less money. If you're looking at $1, they're working on 66 cents on the dollar, and I'm working on a full dollar. So either they have to take it out of their pocket because they have to share the 3% with the other agent and the other company to sell the property, or they have to take it away from them. Now, let me ask you a question. If you were in business and you were out working with a buyer and you saw where a listing was on the market for 2.5% commission, or they saw another one for 4%, which one would you show first? You'd show the 4% one first. So you see, maybe they will do that, but they're actually hurting you. They're actually reducing the number of qualified buyers that come by and look at your house because the agents are saying, I'm going to go show the ones that I make the money on. You could be the best house in the neighborhood. It could be the best price. It could be everything. But I will show a number of houses. You may or may not be at the top of my list in the beginning. You may get it shown later on. But I'm going to show the ones that I have the best chance of generating income on first. I'll lean in that direction anyway. The next one. The last home we sold, we had a bad experience with a real estate agent. Now, so we're just not sure that this is going to work out. How do we handle that? How do we handle that they had a bad experience with the last one? Well, we might be able to tell them a story. Something like, do you shop at Walmart? And they say, well, yeah, we do. We go there. Well, let me ask you a question. If the agent comes up to you in Walmart and for some reason just upsets the dickens out of you, do you quit going to Walmart? Or you just write that off as a bad experience that you had with the person that was there trying to help you on the floor? Now, I know that never happens at Walmart, but just in case that happened. Would that stop you from shopping at Walmart? Probably not. You'd probably come back and work with a different clerk, and they'll help you out. Same thing is true as our business. If we're talking to a seller, we say, do you judge your industry by a bad experience that you had with one person? Just like you wouldn't judge Walmart based on the bad experience you had with a clerk, would you judge your industry the same way? And probably not. And hopefully the relationship that we're building through the presentation I'm making to you on the marketing of your house, if you decide to hire me, then that relationship, I think, will build over the bad relationship that you had with the previous one. Another one is, we really want to buy this other house. It's a beautiful house, but to do that, we need $20,000 more out of this one than you're saying we can get. I mean, we see the numbers. We're showing you what we're talking about. But we want to buy the other house. We need another $20,000. How do you answer that one? Another $20,000 out of the house. Well, there's a couple of things we can do. First of all, you've got to help them to understand that the $20,000 they need out of the house, the buyer's not willing to pay it for them. I'll give you an example. Let's say, for instance, that you had just bought a brand new BMW. And it's a beautiful BMW. It's a gorgeous color. It's the color you've always wanted. It's got beautiful kid glove leather interior. It's got the surround sound in it on it, and you always wanted a 5-speed on the floor, and it's got that. And it's a moving machine. Now, you probably paid $65,000 for it. It's a 700 series. What if I could sell you the same identical car? The same car, not for $65,000, but I could sell it to you for $75,000. Would you buy it from me? Well, no. Why? Because you've already found out that you could buy it over here for $65,000. Same thing is true with the buyer coming in the marketplace. They found two houses. Most builders build every fourth house the same. They just turn the floor plan around and they put a different facade on it or something or other. Change the way the driveway or the sidewalk curves, but plant the tree in a different place in the yard. But most houses are about the same. You find two houses in the same neighborhood, one of them's $10,000 more or $20,000 more than the other. They're both staged the same. They're both just like moving in condition, almost like new construction. Which one would you lean towards? Would you lean towards the one that's $20,000 less or $20,000 more? Same square footage, same lot size, same neighborhood. Well, the buyer's going to lean towards the one that's $20,000 less. So with that being said, we need to help you to get that new house. Let me ask you a question on the new house. If I can't get you the $20,000 out of this one, but I can find you $20,000, are you willing to let me market this property knowing you can still buy the other one? All right? You seem to be thinking, yes, okay, I would do that. What would you do? Well, I have an investor pool. And the investor pool has been going into a relationship with the buyer to where we will own part of the house along with the buyer. And here's all we ask for. At the end of the term that you're in the house and you decide to sell it, we get our down payment back. That's our $20,000. Plus we get 50% of the profit. Whatever that is. And that's before cost of sale. And we're willing to do that. If you love that house that much and you don't mind having joint ownership in it, we'd be happy to come up with investors that will help you to purchase that house. You can get into it right away. The only difference is you've got joint ownership, which means, now we don't live in the house with you, but at the time you decide to sell, we just want our original deposit back, which is the $20,000. And we just want half the profit, whatever it is at that time, before the cost of sale is figured into it. And if you love the house that much, we're willing to do that for you. But we still need to put the house on the market at a price range that will trigger an offer for the buyer to come in and buy it. Is that fair? And if you don't want to use us, how about your mom and dad? If they're still around, maybe they'll come up with the money for you. And they may own it jointly with you understanding they get their 20 grand back. And whoever you work out in the profits between the two of y'all. Now they do that. Let's look at another one. But we have to sell it right away. We can't get tied up with a real estate agent. Well, we talked about that before. But it's the same principle. If they're not getting tied up with a real estate agent, what we need to do is find a way to market the property quickly, and the onus is back on them to set the price right and stage it for a quick sale. The next one is, our house is nicer than those houses, so we need to get more for it. Well, yeah, I think every seller says that. But you know, it's interesting, when the buyer comes in and shops, he knows the value of property, and this one does look a little nicer than that one. He won't pay more for it, but he might lean towards that one first. And so even though that sounds like an objection, they want to raise the value of the listing on that as a seller. Really, that's not as important as letting them know that the buyer is going to pay the same. He's just going to lean towards the one that's nicer. The next one. People always offer less than asking, so why don't we just boost the price up? But you also told me that you want to sell the house within a reasonable period of time. And in order to do that, we have to get the price at a point where the buyer is willing to trigger an offer. So you can raise it up high enough knowing that you're going to come down, but you're going to raise it so high you're not getting anybody to even make an offer on it. So why waste the monthly payment that you're having to pay to the bank and the utilities and all these other things waiting for that to occur? Why not bring it to a point to where you're going to trigger the offer and not lose that money? Imagine if we got you an offer in 3 days after putting it on the market. Would you feel bad about that? A lot of people would say, oh man, we didn't charge enough. No, what you did was you charged it right because you had it right at the mark, right at the time when a buyer was willing to come in and trigger an offer for it. And that's what you're looking for. You didn't wait 90 days for that to happen. You didn't wait 4 months for that to happen. So you're not losing $2,000, $4,000, $6,000, or $8,000 that you never get back. You're able to maximize your gain on sale because you priced it properly and staged it for sale. The next one is, we can always come down the price. Yeah, you can. But remember, just like the other one, the longer you wait, two things occur. The longer you wait, the more money you spend holding the house. And number two is the more stale the property becomes in the realtor community. And what you don't want to have happen is, after about 4, 5, 6 months, the other realtors out there, I wonder what's wrong with the house. I wonder why that one hasn't sold. And they begin to shy away from it. And you don't want to have that happen within our industry. You want to be sure that it stays fresh and ready to go. And so the way you do that is you price it right to start with so that the realtor community knows that, boy, that one's priced right. I just need to find the right buyer to get in there. And so you don't want to hurt yourselves by saying, well, I can always come down the price. Or people always ask less than offering. That's not necessary anymore. You know, it's not easy to be a winner each time that you enter the race, but by perseverance and repeated perseverance, the result is you'll win. Let's talk about buyer objections now. The house is not on a cul-de-sac. You see the buyers looking, they love the house, they're in it, has a nice backyard that's fenced, but they've got 2 little ones. And they really want to have a house in a cul-de-sac because of the little ones. How do we overcome the objection? You can say, oh, I can show you other houses, but you go back and you need to qualify that one to be sure that, well, let me ask you a question. Is the cul-de-sac the only reason, the lack of cul-de-sac, the only reason you don't like the house? Is there any other reason you don't like it other than the cul-de-sac? And they say, no, we think it's great. Well, let me ask you a question. Even though you wanted one on the cul-de-sac, is the amount of traffic that's going up and down this road that big of a problem? You've had a chance to be here now for an hour while you've looked at the house. And you've watched the traffic. Is that traffic level that high? Or is it manageable for you and your children, knowing that the fenced backyard is there? So even though you wanted a cul-de-sac, you love the house, you like the condition it's in, you like the big backyard, you like the big trees that are in it, and you like the fence around it. Is that enough to overcome the issue of the cul-de-sac? Or do you have to have a house that maybe doesn't have a fenced backyard, doesn't have the big trees, doesn't have the extra bonus room over the garage, but it is in a cul-de-sac? When you weigh one against the other, which do you prefer? The one you've looked at and you like, or go look at another one? Another one is, I really don't like the floor plan. You know, the question is, well, what is it that you don't like about the floor plan? You know, is it that the rooms are too small? Do you like the location of the house? Yes. Do you like the size of the lot? Yes, we do. Do you like the amenities that are in the house? Yes, we do. Well, if you took out a wall or two that gave you more of a great room look than a living room and a den and a dining room that are all scrunched up. But you can have a large great room in the house where you have a large den and an eating area in the den, and that also includes the living room, which means it's just very spacious. Would the house meet your needs? See, sometimes we don't ask the question to find out what is it about the floor plan they don't like, and is it doable? They may say, no, we don't want to spend the money to do that. It's just too much to tear walls out, and we don't have the time. Go show us another one. But you got to ask the question and find out whether or not the floor plan can be modified so it meets their needs. Another one, this house is too small and there's no room to add on. What are you going to do? What do you say? What is it about the coziness of the house that you don't like? You said you wanted a larger house, but for instance, if somebody was moving from lower Alabama to lower California, the $100,000 house that they live in lower Alabama is now going to be a $600,000 house out in California, and they don't have the money to make it work. So they may have to get into a smaller house. So one of the things they have to think about is, I need to change my mindset from where I was and the property I had and the space that I had in that property to where I need to be able to afford what I'm getting into. Because, even though this house is so small and there's no room to add on, when we ran the numbers, you qualify to buy this one. You don't qualify to buy a larger house. And still, be close to the schools you want to be close to the work that you want to work in. The drive time and the cost of gas these days is just horrible. So for the other amenities, does this house now meet your needs? Can you live with a house that's a little bit cozier because all the other needs are met? The next one is, before we make a decision, I want Mom and Dad to look at it. That's a tough one. Let me ask a question. How many of you here in the room have had Mom and Dad look at the house and kill the sale? Okay, I see a number of hands go up. You all have been there, right? So since you've been there and you know that, then the key is not to let Mom and Dad look at it. So what do we say to help them to say, do Mom and Dad really need to look at it? Well, let's try and look at it this way. Let me be sure that I understand you. You really do like the house. You like it so much that you want Mom and Dad to come by and take a look at it. Is that right? Okay. What if you have a dad like my dad who will always find something wrong when their children ask you to come take a look at something? And the issue he finds out is a minor issue, but now you become argumentative with Dad when you want the house, and he says, well, you need to either work the price down, or you need to do this or do that in order to purchase the house, ending up placing you in a position where the seller says, no, I reject the offer. Would it be better, if you really love the house, to make the decision to purchase the house and then show Mom and Dad after the purchase the decision you've made, and take the heat at that time, and not run the risk of having Dad and Mom come out, and actually the perfect house for you ends up not being the perfect house anymore because of friction in the family. So it's something to really consider. I think it's important that Mom and Dad take a look at the property, but I think they need to look at it after you make the decision to purchase, not before. Another one. This looks like just exactly what we want, but we want to look at some more houses. Let's say we've been out and we've looked at a half a dozen. So we have two choices. We're either working with someone that has to see all the options before they make a decision, or we're working with someone who would just like to look at another house. But actually the 6 they've looked at meet their needs. So how do we find out how to get it back to where they make a decision on the 6? So one of the things we need to uncover during the time that we're showing property is the personality of the people that we're working with. And if we find out that the personality of the people we're working with, the ones that have to look at all the options before they make a decision, then we have to come back and say, this is it. These are the ones that meet the criteria you asked for, which is in the range of where you want to work, the closeness of the schools and the shopping that you asked for, and the price range that you looked at. These are the ones available. You need to make a decision on these 6. Now let's go and compare. Comparing 1 to 2, of the 2, which do you like best? You like 2. All right, now let's compare 2 to 3. Looking at 2 to 3, which do you like best? You like 2 again. All right, now let's take a look at 2 and 4. Looking at 2 and 4, which of the 2 do you like best? You now like 4 best over 2. All right, looking at 4 and 5, which of those 2 do you like best? You like 4. Now let's take a look at 4 and 6, which of the 2 you like? You like 4. So it sounds to me like the 6 that are available, and there are no others, So it looks like number 4 is the one that you want to go back. Let's go back and take a look at number 4 and see if at the time you take a look at it, that's the house that you really want to buy. You want to do that? Well, let's go do that. So what that does is that helps narrow it down. You use the same approach also if they aren't those kind of people. Because maybe they could look at another house, but they don't really need to. All they're looking at another house for is to confirm that what they look, there's nothing else out there. So why, if there really is nothing else out there for them to look at, why go ahead and show them something else that might not be there? Now, I know I've heard of the story where they start out wanting a one-story ranch, they end up buying a two-story. I mean, that happens. You know, they go through all the criteria. Yeah, we want a one-story house, two-car garage, 1,800 square feet, you know, nice backyard, fireplace, and so on and so on. They end up buying this two-story master suite on the second floor, and they didn't want to go up and downstairs. And that happens. I understand that. And that happens in our business. But we need to tie them down on the ones that we've shown them. You know, if we've done the... And you know what's interesting right now is that people are doing the research ahead of time. It used to be in the old days, we'd have to go collect all the houses and then start showing them. Today, people are coming to you, I want to look at this one, I want to look at this one, I want to look at this one, I want to look at this one. So the only rules that have changed is that now they're coming up with them. Hopefully they'll come up with a short enough list that after they see the 6 or whatever they want to see, that they've made a decision. You can help them to make a decision on which one of those 6 to purchase. Another one is, this property looks very low. Will it flood? Well, we don't know, but the way we can find out is go to an insurance agency and find out through the flood maps whether or not it's in a low flood area. It may be and it may not be. Let me ask you a question. Even though it may be in a low flood area, are you willing to purchase the house anyway because you love it so much? Somebody else did. Somebody's owned this house in this particular flood area and thought it was great, and they're willing to take the risk based on the 100-year flood map that they'll be all right the time they're in it and not have to worry about it. So that's their decision. Number 1, find out if it is in a flood area or not. If it is, are they willing to accept the house as it is? There's some folks in Missouri that did that recently. This is close to what we're looking for, but what else can you show us? Well, let's back to the other one, right? Which is, frankly, this is it. There isn't a house on the market for the floor plan that you're looking for based on what you've told me in the last 6 houses we've shown. So based on that, where are you willing to compromise to go back and pick one of those 6 that will meet your needs, knowing that you're going to have to give something else? Knowing that you have to give something up, take a look at number 1. What would you give up on number 1 if you're willing to buy it? Okay, let's set that one aside. What would you give up on number 2 in order to buy it? What would you give up on number 3 in order to buy it? What would you give up on number 4? What would you give up on number 5? What would you give up on number 6? Now, based on all those give-ups, which one do you give up the least? And you like the house the most? Okay, number 3. That's great. Let's go back and look at number 3 to be sure that you've made the right decision. This looks like what we want, but we need to think it over. Yeah, we're real close. We need to think it over. Well, let me ask you a question. We've looked at a number of houses today, and why are you thinking it over? Let me ask you the question. Are you thinking it over because the living room is a little bit smaller than you anticipated when we looked at some of the other houses? Or are you thinking it over because you really want to have a fenced yard, and this one doesn't have a fenced yard? Are you thinking it over because you were hoping to have more trees on the property, but is it all right with the number of trees that are on the property the way it is? Are you thinking it over because, well, it's 2 blocks further from the elementary school than we thought it was going to be, and now I'm not sure that the kids can bicycle to school. Maybe we need to take them. Are you thinking it over because, what is the reason that you'd like to think it over? And let's talk about that and talk through that so that we can help you with making that decision. You see, when they give that, they want you to leave them alone. Right? They're gotten to the point where they're ready to make a decision. They want to be left alone. We don't want to leave them alone in that process. What we want to do is encourage them to take the next step and make the full decision they want to make. Now, one other one. This house is too far from the elementary school. Well, now, how do we handle that? Well, being too far from the elementary school, what does that mean? Is it just a couple blocks? Or is it a lot more than that? What if there's nothing close to the elementary school and you still want to use that elementary school? Are you willing to compromise based on the distance that they have to travel to take the kids to school? Because that's the only one that's available? That's that close in your price range? What we have to do is not the objection that's the issue. It's the thinking beyond that, which is there are no other alternatives. If this is the only alternative that you have to take, is this okay? And let them make a decision on that. This house is more than we can afford. Well, let me ask you a question. We went through the process and we did the pre-qualifications and we went to the mortgage company. The mortgage company said, this is the monthly payment we're willing to accept. And when we went through that, you noticed that the maximum down payment you had was $5,000, and it looks like you're going to need about $8,000 to get into this house. Yes, it's true. It's a little bit more than you can afford. The monthly payment isn't going to change, but the down payment is. Is there some place you can go and get the extra $2,000? If there's not, I've got somebody you can go to do that. But would your parents be willing to help you get in for an extra $2,000 if this is exactly what you want? But I have an investor that's willing to come up with the extra $2,000 to be able to go into partnership on the house with the understanding that he gets $2,000 back when the house sells, plus he gets half the profit before closing costs. Next one, the monthly payments are too high. Well, I can understand that. You know, they are quite high, especially with gas prices going through the roof the way they are. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe it would be worthwhile to pay a little bit more per month on the monthly payment, knowing that the house is where it is and it's in a marketplace that's appreciating over time? If the property goes up only 2% a year, let's see what the gain is back. It's a $250,000 house. 2% of $250,000 is $5,000 a year. The extra amount you're making on the monthly payment is $200 a month, which is $2,400. So right now you're making $2,500 a year based on appreciation versus a mortgage payment each year. Is it okay to do that? And they may say, well, yeah, I can handle that. It's only going up 2%, huh? Yeah. Some years it may only go up 1%, but if it goes up 1%, you're even. If it goes up 2%, you double your money. If it goes up 3%, you're way ahead. The property is appreciating right now. It only has a one-car garage. That's, I see it has only one car garage. Let me ask you a question. Other than the garage, is there anything else you don't like about the house? No, we love the house. We think it's great. It's just where we want. It's priced right. The yard's great. The trees are wonderful. The street's quiet. But then let me ask you this. If you could figure out a way that you could build a second garage bay onto the house, would that be all right? Well, are there any houses out there in this price range, in this area, that have two-car garages? And the answer is not in the condition you want them. There's some out there that are run down, and it's going to cost you about as much to upgrade them as it would be to add an extra bay on the garage. So if this one's the way you have it, moving condition, you can live in it now right away. The walls are freshly painted, the carpet's brand new, the appliances are fresh and clean. This is a house you can move into right away and not do anything to. And by the way, maybe later on you don't want a two-car garage. Just live with one. We don't want a house with a carport. We'd rather have a garage. You go through the same process. You find out if they love the house. Is this where they want to be? You know, later on, if there's room, they can always build a two-car garage in the back and close the carport if they'd like to. It gives them the options. There may not be another property out there for them to look at. So if this is the one they like, if they love the floor plan, if they love everything about the house, and there's just one small issue, find out whether or not they can live with that issue. In objections, we always have tough ones. The issue is, if we can't handle the objection ourselves, go talk it up in the company. Find out if others in the company have had that same objection and find out what they've said. And if they give you some ideas, give you some clues, then that would be wonderful. Then you can have that objection handled. If you overhear somebody that has an objection and you've had that one and have the answer and help the seller, go ahead and share that with the others in the company. The one thing about realty executives is we always work on a team basis, is we help each other out. We do the best we can to see that not only that we do well, but those that are around us do well also. And so I'd encourage you to help your fellow executives in the office, when they have objections, to give them insight that has worked in the field for you to them, and vice versa. We hope you've enjoyed this.